If you're not updating your skill every day, you're out.
Well, that's not a quote. That's the reality. The quiet power moves no one sees coming.
Having a plan, keep it discreet, trusting your gut, firing like a founder, winning like it's a sport.
Welcome to the Trickcast. It's a mindset, and we've got two of them. Two different views, two different playbooks. One goal: uncover the tricks behind the business success. No fluff, no fake hustle, just real-world tricks from us and the leaders we bring on. If you're building something or thinking about it, hit play or stay behind.
Mr. Abdelazim, good to see you as always. We're back with a new episode of the Trickcast. What's happening this week?
Same here, Alex. It's always good to see you. Been looking forward weekly for our chats.
Yes, sir.
So, this week, eventful again, but let's maybe take it a little bit geopolitics, I guess. What grabbed my attention this week was the fiber cuts for the subsea cables in the Red Sea and service disturbance in Asia and GCC from that. I also saw some very interesting announcements from China around the photonic chipsets. Such a breakthrough, given a strong edge into a completely different direction. I enjoyed Apple event this week as well, together with the ever lean announcements. Looks like very nice new toys to start playing with. It motivated me to start playing with my AR glasses again, actually. So it's nice.
Well, let's see how we can tie it all together, figure out what are some tricks for people to take away. And yeah, let's start with the C cuts. What's happening there, Amir? You're in the telecom space and the kind of critical infrastructure for many, many years, for decades. What is the situation? How severe is it? And how do you think was the response of the parties involved?
I think maybe we can start by historically explaining that how internet actually traffic moves. What is the internet actually? Maybe some people just talk about the internet and just what is the internet actually? So somehow, internet is like some servers placed in different big capitals. It hosts some content and we connect to that servers and through some cables, either terrestrial or subsea under the water. And bigger the hub, the bigger the routes to the hub. And so most of the internet content is normally coming from the US. There is also a good hub of the internet in Singapore, Malaysia on the other side. And of course, China has its own territory there with a lot of lockdowns on their own traffic. There's a European hub and there is a little bit of a concentrated hub as well in the center in Egypt. So if you look at the routes, you will see that similar to the ship routes, traffic has to go through the Red Sea between east and west. And it goes over Suez Canal. So that's where actually in some reports, it would say that 60% of the world internet passes through these routes, through the Red Sea. And if you mention Red Sea, then you would definitely start thinking about also houses, wars, unstable area. Like it's a bit of unstable spot for the last 2 years now with the conflicts happening in the Middle East. So whether the cut was a commercial ship that has threw an anchor and cut the cables from under the sea, or it was a planned sabotage, it really doesn't matter for business in this case. So I think the cut was really had a strong service impact. But what I liked at this time is critical services were restored very quickly. If you compare to few services that has been cut over the last few years, like CrowdStrike outage, for example, it was like a big, crazy
Had a
service
massive effect
disturbance.
on a lot of businesses. Yeah.
And it stayed for some time. I really like how CrowdStrike came back out of this incident. We can have a full episode discussing about CrowdStrike there. But I like how Microsoft responded to restore their services this time. Quicker, faster, strong communication, services were rerouted quickly, and like in no time, the disturbances in GCC.
So one thing, it's kind of what we discussed already with Starlink, with satellites. How critical is this kind of ground infrastructure? Obviously, I know it's critical, but when we talk about competition often, we talk about kind of seeing the writing on the wall whenever it comes to new technologies coming in. Shouldn't countries be looking at more satellite systems like the Starlink? Isn't that the future? Where do you see kind of the ratio going forward, let's say over the next 20, 30 years?
I think it will get a good component. Maybe when we talk about non-terrestrial, like need to go back a little bit. There was a system called Iridium that has been built even before mobile networks in the early 80s. And it failed because it was placing the satellites very high and it was very expensive. And for the handsets to start talking to the satellite, you really have to walk with a big battery at your shoulder and like start going with it. So it was not really efficient. Armies still use it, and when it is critical, it's being used. There will be some stations for that. Now, would I recommend that actually infrastructure providers rely on satellite communications for the internet? Actually, no, I wouldn't do that. Actually,
Not
It-
100%.
not 100%. Should come into the blend for sure. Subsea cables are still the most efficient way of having it, and that needs to be kept this way. I really don't see the satellites taking control of that. It's fiber cable. It's under the sea. It's enough capacity. It's within the control. You can add more, but I would say definitely satellites should come into the blend as a backup. That's for sure. It has its own challenges, but it needs to exist as a backup. But a question I would have is how actually the terrestrial cables, subsea and on land, are protected from geopolitical situations. Are they redundant to each other? Or are we going to start seeing people starting to cut the internet to each other? Like, think about it. Like in the old days, our services are fully dependent on the national land. You're really taking your services from land. So most of the government digital services now are also try to mimic the old way of becoming inside the land. But if your services are dependent on the cloud, and this cloud is staying somewhere else outside of your country, then these subsea cables become very critical to your service. And if there is an aggression against the land or a nation or a people, cutting the cable can be a way of isolating a nation. And how those countries are protecting themselves and how network is neutral, that's, I think, the question I would be asking. Because even if I go to satellite, it's not neutral as well. If it's
Of
in
course.
two hands, that would be
Well,
my angle, actually.
it's like
Neutrality.
US using sanctions for a lot of countries that don't want to do business, that have dictators they don't like, or, there's different kinds of tools to exert control on a country that doesn't want to play ball.
And that's a very interesting angle to look at as well, because I've been for the last 10, 15 years seeing the Western markets trying to say, no, 5G, it has loopholes. If you use Chinese providers, they will actually sabotage your infrastructure. Internet needs to be neutral, and you should maybe use more compliant equipment from Western providers, be it Ericsson, Cisco, Juniper, or name it. And the point is, the angle that is completely missed, that if the infrastructure is completely provided by Western nations, exactly like what you said, they wake up in the morning and decide, okay, we don't like the political regime in this country, right or wrong, I don't care. But then you start punishing the people in the country by disqualifying technology to them. And that's where China never do that, by the way. There was not a single record that Chinese providers stopped supplying infrastructure equipment to any country at any point
They,
of time.
they will use it, you're right. They'll use more the carrot, but they will end up getting backdoor deals for land, for sale ports, and all kinds of national resources. So it's smart. It's definitely better than bringing, wars to countries, in my opinion. But, if the West kind of tried to use the carrot ethically as well, in a better way than China, right? Where you're not necessarily getting backdoor deals or emptying all the copper mines and then lithium mines, all that kind of stuff, could be a different world, don't you
I
think?
think we should all stand by internet neutrality. Infrastructure of the internet, water supply, electrical supply, fuel and energy, and internet should be added to the mix. If the internet becomes of neutral resources and neutral, and we really stand by this word, then actually there's no need for a card. Then you use whatever supplier and you have in the security enough that no one will actually stop supplying you with the relevant technology for your infrastructure when needed. If we stand by what we actually promise, we don't have a problem. And then that covers all in reality. But the point is that internet neutrality is used only when it needs to be used, and sanctions is used when it needs to be used.
And that's a good gateway. So tell us what happened there with the announcement of basically new technology that can be used as an advantage in chipset manufacturing and a lot of quantum stuff. So what's the story there, Amir?
I think following what we've been talking about earlier about actually infrastructure wars, if I call it this way, the maybe 10 years ago, the US government in the first Trump administration sanctioned China on access to certain chips, and then sanctioned Huawei specifically on access to all the American products, to the point that actually companies that are using certain components, certain products from Huawei would be even punished in Nasdaq on the stock markets. It was really like an extreme war to actually try to stop
Slow down.
slow down the advances on the 5G technology and the chipsets in the Chinese. And you could have, if you follow the evolution since there, you would definitely see that actually China stopped a little bit, slowed down. At some point of time, you would easily see that most of the Western providers are able to provide 6 nanometer chipsets, while Chinese were able to only go to the 14 nanometer and starting recycling. And that was the traditional way of actually building chipsets. Then maybe a couple of years ago, China came with its own innovation on the photonic chipsets, actually. And it's, instead of using the traditional way, and to just simplify it for the audience, we are using light to transfer. And since you're able to use nanotechnology on the lights, you're able to go down to as small as 3 nanometers or less. And that makes it like a sand piece. With this technology replace the chipsets of NVIDIA or TSMC? Not yet, I guess. But it's a very interesting response from my point of view, that you try to apply a certain measure to slow some person down or entity, and instead of actually doing that, you push them to overtake you with a certain way. So, and I think Chinese did well. It's a very interesting development from my point of view, that goes back to the point, globalization, collaboration is better for everyone. Like putting rules and barriers between things never ends well, actually. It's just gonna create more trouble. So what do you think?
The way I usually look at it, there's a narrative that China is the bad guy, in a lot of situations. There's all kinds of stuff we can talk about, right? IP theft and maybe geopolitical stuff. But regardless, there's no kind of good guys in that space, really. What I see is, given their current demographic situation, that basically their population expected to basically drop by half over the next 50 to 100 years. And a lot of people, there seems to be credible research to show that their population is actually much, much lower currently than advertised, right? Because obviously you never really know the real data from the CCP. I'm not sure if you heard about that, but one thing after COVID, they had like a huge increase of basically morgues that popped up. They had like massive declines in daycares, like teachers across basically the whole country, that they can measure that actually the population might be not 1.4 billion, but actually maybe 600 to 800 million people potentially. And it's kind of on the decline given the one-child policy, a lot of the kind of back end side of things. My perspective is, I think it's good they're doing this. I don't see them kind of being as big of a threat in the future, because I think they'll actually need this to combat the demographic situation. When you got robotics, when you got other stuff, basically that can replace the labor of a couple 100 million people, I think that's kind of their way out of the demographic situation.
That applies on every country. If we dig deeper, what's really happening is that we are losing talent. We're losing critical mass worldwide, actually. And that talent and critical mass, like, we are replacing with upgrading the existing talent with more capabilities using AI and complementing it with machines. But the reality of the matter is that we are using talent despite the increase of population. The effective critical mass is decreasing.
How do you measure that the worldwide amount of quantity of talent is decreasing?
You can see it actually on the demand on resources. Like you can see when you're looking for, during COVID, we were looking for doctors. It was like a scarce resource. We're looking for nurses. It was a scarce resource. Now we're looking for engineers that are qualified or to be reprogrammed. Yeah, we're not able to find the right people. And
that could be a whole other episode, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. And speaking of innovation, I guess that's a good segue into the next topic. So you love your Apple products, Amir. Maybe tell us, what were you most excited about with the announcements?
I love about Apple that they are reliable. I wouldn't really think they are innovative as they were before. Like I have not seen a breakthrough product yet from Apple for the last, I don't know, 10 years. It's been always like, yeah, let's increase a centimeter here, decrease a centimeter here, let's make the phone thinner, let's make it like
Add an
it's
extra
really
camera.
yeah, let's finally make the two cameras 48 on this one. Like it's really like very mediocre when it comes to innovation. But my feeling is that they have moved into more into innovating, into keeping their competitive advantage on privacy and reliability. So they still hold their moral grounds high when it comes to say, if Apple launches a product, it works. If it tells you that this is a phone that does 1, 2, 3, 4, it will do 1, 2, 3, 4. And they still repurposes it, the use case. And it's still the safest place when it comes to privacy. You can see that they're standing strong against it. Yeah, in critical situations, no one actually stands against the powers of actually violating privacy. But I think if there is a company standing high here, it's Apple. So the line that they produced, they're nice. It's still flashy event. I specifically like what they did with the AirPods 3 and starting to put the health gadgets into the ear and really good support to hearing aid and very good advancement into one good direction tells what they are actually trying to do here. The phone line is just a reliable phone line that is a more, I would say, faster now, and that's it. But what was funny is that so the event of Apple came exactly at the back of IFA Berlin, and there was a
And you
very
attended that
interesting
in person, right?
yeah, there was a very interesting in-ear gadget from a Berlin startup that came was almost loaded with like 10 features more than what Apple announcement for their in-ear. And yes, I would still think that maybe the reliability of the hardware will be definitely in the favor of Apple in here. But like it's kind of Apple announced something that is already like done with 10 times more features by a small startup in Berlin. And I'm gonna really one day try both of them next to each other and see how it works in reality.
Well, I mean,
But
something
but
you
I've
cannot touch upon that Apple doesn't innovate anymore, really. And they kind of go into a market when they know this is something that's going to stick around. It's not a fad, for example, right? You know, touch screen phones. You had the old, there's all kinds of, you know, that they had actually a Microsoft operating system. It was like basically, I forget what they're called, but it was a type of smartphone that did the whole touch screen thing before Apple, right?
That's
When
true.
it was kind of coming back, they just did it better, more aesthetically pleasing, smoother, and so on. So given that, they'll probably just copy those features over the next 2, 3 years and keep charging you 400 or 500 euros for a new headset every year.
That's true. That's true. And I think this is what they lost to their edge since actually passing of I would say the legendary Steve Jobs actually. But it's really like since we missed him on this earth, I guess the innovation of Apple changed it to a completely different direction. They are, I would say, they really still focus that their edge is in reliability and privacy, not in giving you the latest loaded
Innovative
feature
features. Yeah.
in the phone. But yeah, we've seen robots that climb stairs in IFA. We've seen. It's a shame. Next time we should actually film from there. That would be
That'd be
nice.
cool.
And
Yeah, for
that
sure.
would be really cool. Climbing stairs robots. We're talking about 360 drones.
hmm
It's we should also have one clear episode about drones. So it was really fun. It was really cool. I liked what I've seen, and in the back of Apple, I also like what I've seen in Apple. It's always a cheerful moment for Apple users on the announcements of Apple Day. It's really nice. So did
It's a
anything catch your
cult.
eye
It's a
in
cult, Amir. It's a cult. I'm just teasing you.
yeah, it is. But it's depends what you define a cult. But
Yeah.
it might be a case. So
I
did
I
anything
thought
catch
the
your eye from
medical.
IFA announcement?
Yeah, the medical stuff looks super cool. Obviously, like things like Whoop and wearable gadgets are here to stay. So I think it's nice they're innovating. I'm not sure if you've seen this phone as well. It's kind of like a minimal phone, almost like the Kindle, which is cool because there's a lot of talk now with the blue light and a lot of technologies disturbing circadian rhythms, potentially ADHD in children, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's cool. There's actually a couple companies in Silicon Valley as well that have this kind of innovative screen that's basically like a Kindle screen. It's like a red screen. I like this direction. You know, I usually vote with my money, so I try to buy these kinds of products when they're cool.
This
And
TCL is a very attractive company to watch. True.
and I thought this was super cool. You know, people who basically, whatever, had an accident, lost their ability to walk. If you can have something like this that gives you the ability to run with your kids, like that's pretty incredible, right?
Isn't that beautiful when you see how
It's
tech changes life?
and it's so
Like,
minimal as well. It seems like it's not the big RoboCop type of bulky setup.
yeah, last year there was a similar actually product came in life in France that almost got tears into my eyes when I was watching the announcement. It was a gentleman, I will have to remember the name, that the gentleman who have done it, he did it for his brother who had a car accident. And the gentleman devoted his life to bring his brother to walk. And the announcement was his brother walking.
Wow.
And it was really interesting. I'll share with you the name later.
Okay, let's put it in the show note. There's actually
Yeah,
one cool startup as well I follow on LinkedIn. Obviously, you know, we're in the professional space, hiring, recruiting. Have you heard of this company, Dot Lumen?
no.
So if I'm not mistaken, they're making kind of like these goggles that people who are blind can wear. And it basically navigates them to be able to walk, to see kind of in a way. And it's a Romanian startup, and I'm just impressed with the technical talent. Like they hire like top 1% of engineers. Super cool, you know, and go
It's
Romania. Like
beautiful.
it's nice to see this kind of stuff. And, you know, pretty amazing stuff.
It's somehow we're closing in into creating humanoids, right?
Exactly.
Like it's
We should get these guys on the podcast
yes, we
for one of
should.
the episodes.
Let's do that. Let's do that. This type of innovation is actually what brings us into being a cult in technology more than anyone else, I would say. You can't do that without chipsets, without things. Like you changing people's life. And I think I would encourage everyone to continue doing that. And if we are coming to a close to this episode, I would actually love to close with this really blind lady getting back part of her life, not getting back, getting an advantage in her life that actually
It wouldn't be
no
possible
one
without
had. It
technology.
wouldn't be possible without technology. Yeah, it's
Well,
it's it's great. Keep doing that, guys. Keep doing that. Just focus that infrastructure doesn't go down. This is the great example of doing good and doing well.
and this is your trick of the week. We'll close it off here and chat to everybody next week, Amir, and speak to you soon.
Thank you.